All right, what we got next? We are going to go with Jonathan. Is he close by? Okay, Jonathan, welcome him to the stage. He is going to lead our next panel discussion talking about luxury, innovation, and disruption. Ladies and gentlemen, Jonathan Falik.
So I'm about to have 3 more panelists come. Until they come, I guess I can tell you whatever it is I want. But let me start off by saying what an amazing amount of talent in this room. I know a lot of the people. There's some that I don't know. There's some that I'd like to know. And what an incredible job that Sharon and Barak and the ILHA team have done pulling this together. Biggest conference so far with almost 1,000 registrants, almost 60 sponsors. Come on, give it up. Give it up for ILHA, Sharon, Barak. So I am a Z as well. I selected Z. I don't think I'm really a troublemaker. We'll see at the end of the panel, but I don't think so. So I'm Jonathan Falik, founder, CEO of JF Capital Advisors. We're a little over 20 years old. We focus on complicated hotel industry transactions, a lot of operational restructurings, capital restructurings, ownership restructurings. We do a lot of ground lease deals, condo hotel deals. If it's messy and complicated, we do it. I'm going to ask each of the panelists to introduce themselves because they'll do a much better job than I can, and then we're going to get right into it. But right to my left is Ayesha Molino, who's the president and COO of Vdara and ARIA. So take it away. Tell us about yourself.
Thank you very much. So I'm Ayesha Molino. I'm the president and CEO of ARIA Resort and Casino, as well as Vdara Hotel and Spa. I'm also the chief public affairs officer for MGM Resorts International. I've been with the company for about 8 years and thrilled to be here today. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Thank you. Walter Eisenberg, industry leader, longtime friend. Tell us about yourself.
Good afternoon. Walter Eisenberg, co-founder, CEO of Sage Hospitality Group. We just celebrated 40 years in business in March of this year and operate 65 hotels, 50 restaurants, bars, coffee shops, and entertainment venues around the country. Thank you.
All right, then we've got Keith Space way at the end, well known in the industry, but Keith and I have been spending a lot of time together recently in the last year or so, working together on behalf of Florida International University, where Keith chairs the steering committee of their Hospitality Real Estate Advisory Board, and I'm on the board, so Keith is my boss. Go, Keith.
Keith Space. I'm the president of Fort Hospitality. We are the asset management arm of a developer called Fort Partners. Currently, we own the Four Seasons in South Florida, Palm Beach, Fort Lauderdale, Surfside, and in Miami Brickell. We also own and operate an island in the Bahamas called Norman's Key, which has gotten converted into a luxury residential community under the Bahamian Hotel Encouragement Act. And so we also operate it as a very high-end luxury resort. We're developing Four Seasons in Rome. We will have the only hotel inside Vatican City with the Four Seasons Vatican. We're also developing a hotel in Portofino and one in Corfu as well. So that's just a few.
So you have a lot of free time.
Yes.
A lot of free time. So Ayesha, let's start with you, right? So, we'll talk a little bit about the hotels, the luxury hotels in Keith's portfolio and Walter's, but they don't have any 4,000 plus room luxury hotels, and they don't have any 1,500, about 1,500 room luxury hotels. How do you do luxury at such scale?
It's a daily challenge, and I would say that the first and foremost thing you need is a strong team that wakes up every day absolutely dedicated to that proposition, right? As a company, we are very, very laser focused on what our goal is. And our goal is to provide the highest level of guest service every single day. You know, although we operate in 8 states as MGM Resorts, we also have properties in Macau. The core of our business is here in Las Vegas. And Las Vegas is a changing destination. It's increasingly a luxury destination that's fueled by an ever-changing, extremely exciting sports and entertainment landscape. We at MGM Resorts are lucky to be in the epicenter of it, but we also know with these kinds of experiences comes a crowd that's very well-traveled and with a very high set of expectations for what luxury is and what it means. And so we spend a ton of time recruiting employees, training employees, again at scale. You know, at ARIA alone, we have about 5,000 FTEs. So it gives you a sense of the scale of the operation. And it really is being crystal clear of what the experience is that needs to be delivered to the guests and reinforcing it every single day. You can't do it without having strong leadership in place. You can't do it without having a system of reinforcing those expectations and cascading them throughout the organization. And then recognizing it when things go right, and really critically catching it extremely quickly when things go wrong, because they do. But in every moment where things go wrong, we have systems in place to try to capture it, to immediately correct it, and to save the interaction with the guest and save that experience for the guest. And it's that hard work that ultimately saves the day.
So Keith, if I told you were gonna build a hotel in Southern Florida with 4,000 rooms or 1,500 rooms at the luxury level, would you run to the exits?
Absolutely. The scale in which you work is mind-boggling. 4,000 rooms at the luxury level, so it's incredible. The Surf Club has 103 rooms, to give you the opposite end of the spectrum. So it's mind-boggling.
And you have a clientele that's not shy about their needs and demands.
Not in the least, but we're happy to help them. So.
And what about the other stuff, say in Florida in your portfolio? Like how many rooms is the Four Seasons in Brickell, the Four Seasons in Palm Beach, and Fort Lauderdale?
Yeah, so Four Seasons in Palm Beach is 207, and in Fort Lauderdale it's 185, and then in Brickell it's 225. So it's a different scale by a lot.
Got it. And then Walter, what about you? So the luxury hotel, you have luxury hotels, you have kind of like 4-star, upper upscale hotels. The luxury hotels in your portfolio, what are they like size-wise, and brand-wise?
So we are on the small end at 80 keys, on the big end 400 in our luxury space. Independence, luxury collection, obviously with Marriott, and then we operate the Ritz-Carlton on North Michigan Avenue in Chicago, and that's the largest at 400 keys.
So if you can add a little more commentary on that, because it's probably interesting to a bunch of the people in this room. I know you do it. I'm not aware of anyone else managing a Four Seasons or Ritz-Carlton hotel.
Yeah, that is true. We're the only third-party operator of Ritz. Kind of a bit of a long story. I'll shorten it. But the Ritz, when the Ritz-Carlton was in the system, this was long before Marriott bought it. A family owned the Ritz-Carlton name. They had the Ritz-Carlton in Boston. They signed 75-year license agreements at 1% of gross to kind of friends and family, one of which was in Chicago. And that hotel for its first 30 years of existence was actually managed by Four Seasons. If you can imagine the confusion of that. You had to go to the Four Seasons website to book the Ritz-Carlton in Chicago. When that management agreement came to an end, we were contacted by the owners. I met with Bill Marriott and Arnie Sorensen and said, look, this is the opportunity to get it into the Ritz name. They don't want Marriott Management, and we struck a deal, and that's how we ended up there. So.
Interesting. So the title of this panel is Trends in Luxury, Industry Disruptors, and Innovation. So like the hotel industry overall is not like the most embracing of change. We do it, but we do it slowly and slower than a lot of other industries. One of the areas where we are adopting more and more and getting a little bit better is technology. So let's talk about technology, and maybe like let's try to frame it in terms of, and Keith, we'll start with you and just work this way. What has changed in terms of use of technology pre-COVID versus today? Like what's changed? What are you doing differently? How are you thinking about it differently?
Well, I hate to use COVID as a benchmark because technology in the hospitality space, luxury included, was making grounds before COVID. I think COVID accelerated the process, and COVID forced us to become more comfortable with it, unfortunately out of fear. But then when people and operators learned that it wasn't so scary, they really started to aggressively implement it. I think one of the biggest changes we see in that is sort of the mobile interaction, not just mobile check-in, but the use of your website being mobile enabled, and the functionality of your website, and everything from being able to read a QR code anywhere and having it translate to a real user interface that's seamless and elegant. I think that's probably one of the biggest things that we've seen. Technology used to be anti-luxury, and the luxury operators really sort of stayed away from it. And I think now that the user interface has really become seamless and elegant, it's sort of befitting of a luxury traveler.
And Walter, same thing on technology. What's changed in your portfolio?
Yeah, I think that the most important thing about technology in luxury is that we need to remain very nimble in how we use it. And when we look at our customers today, they're 25 to 70. You know, if you think about that, the people on the back end of that age range probably are not as interested in using technology. And even people on the younger end of the age range may want that personal interaction. So I think reading and knowing the customer and understanding what they want, whether they're using mobile check-in, or how they use the website, or how they even do their booking. One of the things that's surprising to me is the level of phone calls that we're still getting to book rooms. It's a surprising number. And so I think we need to really understand the customer and be where the customer wants to be. And I think that's the most important thing about using technology in luxury.
How about you? How does it work across such big properties within an even bigger company?
Yeah, you know, at our scale, our customer mix is really segmented into, we have a solid base of leisure travelers, of course, a solid base of convention travelers with about 500,000 square feet of convention space at ARIA alone, and then a solid mix of what we call our casino customers as well, again, across all age ranges from around the world. But I think the way that I really view technology is that what it has increasingly done is transform the customer's expectation for how quickly and efficiently they expect services and products to be delivered, right? So everybody that I know, including, you know, my 86-year-old mother-in-law to my 15-year-old nephew, uses the internet to purchase goods, to purchase services. And increasingly, they expect that process to really occur with one click, right? 2 clicks, 3 clicks, too many. If you have to insert your credit card on a different page.
What?
Yeah, exactly.
No.
Exactly.
Don't do it.
It creates a friction point, and customers don't want friction. And increasingly, technology allows them to receive what they want without that friction. In hospitality, we have been, I think, slower than most to adapt and adopt that and really understand how do we take that idea of one click, of no friction, and deliver that in our environment. And I think that that's what we're really laser focused on. And so, we talk a lot about some of the smaller technological adoptions, whether that's mobile check-in, whether that's QR codes, but all of that, I think, is subsumed by this larger goal, which is really how do we respond to that consumer's desire for one click experience.
So I'm staying here. A bunch of people are. I ate in one of the restaurants last night, and this morning I got an email, saying, how was your experience at the restaurant? Not through an open table or whatever. I just walked up. I didn't have a reservation. I walked up to the front desk. They said, are you staying here? So all of a sudden they had the information and are able to track it, and they know what I spent, what I ate, what I did, and asked how my experience was. So we didn't plan this, but the next thing and you mentioned it, the next thing I wanted to start to talk about was segmentation. And within the luxury sector, how segmentation has changed somewhat over the last several years. And this one, I think, was influenced by COVID and will kind of take on its own life going forward. But in your portfolio, like during COVID, obviously segmentation looked different. There was a slowdown in group and everyone saw that. Now we're on the other side of it. How do you think about your properties and demand segmentation, what different segments are looking for, why they're coming to you, and how it's just changed over time? Yeah.
So our business has been really interesting post-COVID. I would say immediately after post-COVID, what we really saw was our casino customers came back first. There was certainly, I think, a lot of excitement to get back in the world. We saw a lot of pent-up demand. And then certainly after that, the leisure customer came and the transient customer came roaring back, right? I think there was just this general sense of FOMO that had taken over. People were very excited to gather and travel again, and we in Vegas in particular were huge beneficiaries of that. And our convention business came back last, along with parts of our international business, I will say. And so on the convention side, what we've seen is that it has been a slow uptake, but we are certainly getting back to, if not 2019 levels in terms of sheer volume, certainly 2019 levels and exceeding them in terms of the quality of the experience that the convention attendees are seeking, in terms of their overall food and beverage desires. The overall quality of that experience, I think, has fundamentally changed, because I think people do view gathering now as a true luxury, and they want to make that experience very meaningful, even if they do it a little bit less. And so, from that perspective, I think the overall business has certainly changed since 2019, but changed for the better. We're seeing just strength across all segments, both in terms of just sheer visitation numbers, occupancy numbers, but also in terms of the quality of the spend that the customer wants to engage in.
Walter, so you have assets, you have luxury hotels in all sorts of different markets, right? Some of them have been slower to respond and really bounce back, like Portland, Oregon, right, where you have a few hotels. How has segmentation changed kind of within your luxury portfolio, and how has that varied by market?
Yeah, not only is there a big variance by market, but I think there's a big variance by micro market within a market. Your micro location will have a huge impact on segmentation and who's going to actually stay there, whether it's a leisure group or BT customer. We are urban and resort, but primarily urban, and we did not get the immediate bounce back of that leisure customer, though we saw a huge difference on the weekends immediately following COVID, where the leisure customer was coming back for that weekend staycation, if you will. But then I think the second thing that we've seen, the second piece of business that really came back for us was group, and it was small group, where the corporate customer would take a relatively small group to a luxury location because everybody was working remotely, had to keep culture strong, and they were willing to spend up. And not only spend up on room, but then also on F&B and other amenities. And so those are really the things that, as we saw things coming back, and we're now seeing the BT customer come back, but much more slowly. And again, like a market like Portland versus a market, we have a luxury asset in Savannah, that property came roaring back. And so just big differences in the markets.
And so you mentioned that you were seeing smaller group come back. What did that look like, and what does it look like in terms of changes in the booking pattern? How far in advance is that booked? Because if you're doing a conference with 500 people or 5,000 people, it's tough to pull that together on 30 days notice.
Yeah, and the small group, the booking window, and it's still today very short. The spontaneous, the CEO says, I got to get my people together and pull this meeting together. It's going to be 20 people or 30 people, and we're going to do it in 2 weeks or 3 weeks. So we're still seeing, not as much of that today, but we still are seeing that business, the very short booking window. And then the other thing that's been great about that business is there's not really a budget. And so the spend on ancillary has been great.
And Keith, talk about segmentation. I know what you're going to say.
I think we've seen a very definitive segment, the bleisure segment, that someone who's coming down for business 1 to 3 days and then extending that stay weekday, weekend. It's not necessarily indicative of your your calendar days, but more about when you have to be in that location, and is there something else interesting happening in that location that you want to stay on for. So Walter had mentioned remote work has really changed the dynamic of a business trip, both for good and bad. But the one thing that we really see in this bleisure sort of segment it's not exclusive to resorts. As someone that really is a museum buff and can finally get into a museum that they had on their bucket list, and there happens to be a business meeting in that same city, they can extend a day or arrive early, work remotely, then go see that, whether it's an event in the evening or, as I said, some sort of cultural activity. That bleisure segment, I think, is probably the most significant change in segmentation.
And do you think that just continues going forward? People are used to it and it's part of the culture now?
Oh, for sure. I think that grows. There's a number of statistics out there and numbers. Some say by 2032, it's a $700 billion market.
And Ayesha, as you think about it, right, this bleisure, the mixing of business and leisure, right, is one of the reasons people choose to come to Vegas for conventions, right? We had a pre-conference panel call, and there was a suggestion that most people come to Las Vegas for, I think it was sin and debauchery. We actually have a transcript of this discussion, but we're not coming for that. So I don't know. Keith, were you coming for sin and debauchery or no comment?
No. As a matter of fact, I'm here for the conference and then I'm heading back. So
Walter?
No, definitely not.
So Ayesha, you need us to be in this town for sin and debauchery. Maybe maybe we don't need to admit it, right? But you need it, right?
Well, I will say again, Vegas has morphed as a destination, right? So there's certainly your share of whatever you want in Vegas, you can get in Vegas, but that also includes some of the world's finest restaurants, Michelin-starred chefs, some of the most fantastic concert venues that you have anywhere in the world. We just had Formula One racing down Las Vegas Boulevard at 10 p.m. 2 weekends ago. So, in terms of, again, the offerings of Vegas, there truly is something for everyone now. And I think that's one of the most exciting parts of the city.
And in terms of all this like work remote and business leisure, like I've been doing it for 30 years, right? I was at Price Waterhouse and then at Bear Stearns and on the road all the time and launched my own business. So I'm used to going wherever, and the first thing I want to know in every hotel is how am I going to print something and where am I going to scan it? I'll get off an airplane and have 13 documents marked up that I want to scan. Have you seen any change or any demand for different amenities, features, or functions to accommodate those travelers that need to work while they're away? Any changes?
So I would say that it's something that we're very cognizant of, and for example, within the portfolio, we frequently will do wholesale room remodels, and as part of that, we will have our convention guests, for example, stay in the model rooms and say, does this work for you? Understanding that there is that increasing blend of leisure and business travel, right? And so it needs to be able to serve in-room dining, yes, but also needs to be able to serve a Zoom call. And so we're very aware of and building to make sure that flexibility always exists.
Walter, any changes in what's going into the hotels or services provided to accommodate remote workers?
I think technology it's like air conditioning. It better work, and it better work really well. And I think that, that's evolved over time, but I think the idea that you're not providing, the best technology to the consumer coming in the room, in the public space, and frankly, we want to get them out of the room into the public space to be working. We're trying to create the environment where there's energy there that they want to be in that space versus necessarily just being in their room. But the technology has to be top-notch.
Keith, tech?
Oh my God, for sure. And on every scale, not just sort of the Wi-Fi, not just the speed. As we talked about, it's got to be one click. It's got to be easy to access. But your cellular reach, right? This idea that you have dead zones in your building, that's unacceptable.
Bad.
So regardless of the size, I think, as Walter mentions, not just in your lobby, but all of your public spaces, down on your pool deck, for us, out on the beach. It's really, the technology has to work, it has to be fluid, it has to be accessible, and it has to be frictionless. That's a great sort of point.
Frictionless is a great word, right? We expect that, right? That goes back to the one click, right? If you've got to do multiple things, if you have to take multiple steps, go to multiple places, right? It doesn't work. So we talked about this a little bit the other day. What things used to happen in a luxury hotel? What services or what was provided in a luxury hotel that's like not really as important today, or really not as necessary today? What's changed from 30 years ago to now?
Well, I think we do all of the same things. Walter said it really well. You need to meet the customer where they are. So if you want turn down service, if you want a second service, particularly in the luxury environment, you had better be prepared to execute on that and execute well. If someone wants that second service before they get back from dinner, you had better be in that guest room, and it had better be right. On the flip side of that, we don't see people going to the concierge as often, just because we're so used to doing things on our phone. It becomes seamless relative to restaurant reservations, theater tickets. Everything is so mobile enabled. It's an extra step to actually, and sometimes several extra steps to stop at the concierge desk, even ignoring language barriers. But so I think we're still doing it all. I think we're doing it at a different cadence. Some guests are taking advantage of technology. Some still want to talk to an individual, but it's all still there, all of the basics.
One of the things that I've found, and maybe it's more me, but one of the observations I've had is the people that travel like once or twice a year want every service. They want the turn down service, they want the chocolates on their pillow, they want a new fluffy robe every day, they want someone to like greet them when they walk, down the hallway and into the restaurant. And then the kind of the people that are used to traveling and are on airplanes and in hotels all the time, right? Not so much. They're like, from my perspective, like, and I travel a good amount, the only reason I ever thought that turn down service was useful to me is to get extra little good chocolates, right? Other than that, like, I didn't need someone to like, tweak the bed or, move something. I just didn't need it. And a long time ago when I was working in investment banking and working 110 hours a week and wasn't sure like what city I was in, I'd wake up in the morning, right, and find like I fell asleep on top of the bed, on top of the covers, and there were like some chocolates underneath me. And so I don't do that anymore. I get a little bit more sleep, but I was like, I don't need this, but give me a few chocolates in a bag on the side of the bed, and I'm good. But Keith, are you getting turned down service? Not are you offering it, you personally? Do you want it?
It depends. Am I with my family? Are we at a resort? Did we shower and wipe out all of the towels and all of the linen at 4 o'clock before going to dinner? And I know I'm going to want to shower in the morning? Maybe.
So I think what you just said is a version of meet the customer where they are.
Sure.
Right. Even though you're the same person with the same information, you have different needs and expectations if you're traveling with your family, really for leisure, right? Versus if you're on a business trip.
Yes.
Walter, you taking turn down?
Well, I agree with what Keith said. It depends. If I'm by myself, I don't care as much. If I'm with my family, I care more. I also think customization is really critical. The idea that we would have the housekeeping team knock on a door at 6 p.m. and they're going through the hotel, and maybe between 5:30 and 6 p.m. they get this floor done. They knock on the door, they're going to put a chocolate on your pillow. I just think those days are gone. We should be looking at, what does Keith want in his room, and meeting him there. And the more customized, the more we know about that customer, the more that we can surprise and delight. Some old words, but I think they still apply. The more that we can do that, I think our ability to retain that customer as being loving us goes way up. And I think that's the key to me to what we used to think about as, okay, we've got to do this. We need these things in the room. I think those days are over.
Ayesha, do you offer turn down service for 4,400 rooms?
We do on certain floors, and certainly in our Sky Suites tower we do. But I agree with what my colleagues have said, that certainly knowing the customer and being able to customize to the customer is the gold standard. At our scale, it's something we strive for, and I think we're making improvements every day. But as we get there, optionality is really important, right? If we, ideally, we would know enough about the customer to be able to customize that guest experience for them. As we get there, giving them the options and the tools to customize their experience themselves is very important. And we have seen some permanent changes come out of COVID, right? I think, for example, we still see a very high percentage of do not disturbs. Just folks who would prefer to come and go on their timetable at their leisure.
That's me.
Yep.
Do not disturb.
They'll ask for service when they want it, but beyond that, they don't want the knock at the door every 45 minutes for something. And so it's making sure that all of those tools exist, are clearly identified, and then respected by the team. And that's sort of the interim step till we get to that ideal customization.
Okay. Walter, you see any changes on the horizon? You think anything's going to change over the next, obviously some things will change, but any kind of real change in mindset and service offerings in 25, 26, 27, just foreseeable future?
Yeah, I think technology is going to continue to play a more important role. AI is still in its infancy, but I think that the big shift to me in what luxury was and what luxury has become, and even more so, is people are wanting experiences, and they've moved away from maybe this traditional luxury, that was there. I mean, Four Seasons and Ritz kind of were the two biggest players, certainly in traditional luxury, and I think the consumer is moving away from needing or expecting some of those things and moving towards wanting great experiences, both on property and off property. And how do we facilitate that for them? I think that's where we've moved to, and that will accelerate.
Keith, you see changes coming?
Yeah, look, I think we're going to continue to see luxury exist in more and more remote locations. To Walter's point about creating experiences, you're sort of forging new territories. Your technology is able to deliver marketing and to deliver eyeballs very inexpensively. And so, again, meeting the customer where they want to be. If someone wants an incredible remote location, they're willing to pay for it. You'll find a luxury hotel wherever that is. I don't see that as a barrier the way it once was.
And do you see kind of like, I want to talk at a high level about age of customer. Are you seeing more younger customers than you would have seen 15 years ago, 20, 30, 40 years ago, coming in and patronizing luxury hotels?
We are seeing it very myopic, though, for us. Fort Lauderdale is the best example. It's a young person's market, so I think the average age at our Fort Lauderdale Four Seasons is probably younger than, say, Surf Club, but Surf Club is also 4 times the average rate of Fort Lauderdale.
Say that again.
Surf Club is 4 times the average rate of Fort Lauderdale. So it's very myopic from my purview. I will say I've stayed in the Palm Beach Four Seasons a number of times, and there always seems to be a ton of pregnant people. So my wife is like, don't drink the water. There's something in the water up here, because there's tons of families. So, but that, again, it's super myopic.
Walter, are you seeing younger guests?
Yeah, I think for sure. I mean, when I was growing up, the idea that I would go to a Four Seasons or a Ritz-Carlton was, for lots of reasons, not happening. But I think that, the next generation has much better access for all sorts of reasons, and they have more money. I mean, there just is there's a huge shift in socioeconomics with the younger generation, and so I think you're seeing that, and maybe not at surf.
No, what's the number? There's like $3 trillion of wealth that's going to change in the next 2 decades. It's some gigantic.
That's what happens as some of us get older.
It's, well, our kids will spend it all, but I think that that's just a big shift in the consumer, and that consumer is obviously very, very different than the baby boomer.
Ayesha, are you seeing younger customers or more younger customers? I know it's tricky with such large hotels. You need everyone to fill them up.
You do need everyone, and we do have everyone. And Vegas for a long time has attracted a younger demographic as well. And certainly for my property, for ARIA and Vdara, we do see that demographic trending a little bit younger, but still, we're mostly in the 30s, 40s, early 50s, not much younger than that.
And do you think that's changed over the last 10, 15 years?
I think what's changed is the experience that younger customers are looking for in Vegas, but I don't think that demographic is necessarily meaningfully shifted here.
Interesting. Very interesting. Keith, what scares you about 2025? We just had an election. There's some craziness out there in the world. Everyone was banking on interest rates are going to come down, and it really doesn't look like that based on where the 10-year Treasury is. What worries you? What are you concerned about, nervous about coming into 2025?
Look, I think geopolitics are always a concern because we never know how they're going to affect, sort of other areas. That's probably my biggest concern is the vast majority of South Korea, who knows what trickles down, French government's collapsing. There's plenty of things to worry about on the international stage. So,
Walter, what scares you?
Yeah, having been through a lot of difficult times, I stopped worrying about the things I don't control. And so I think, geopolitics obviously is a big potential risk, but it's completely outside of our control. And I will tell you that we focus internally to say, let's focus on what we control, which is really, focus on making sure that as leaders that our associates have a great experience at work, that our customers have a great experience at our properties, and hopefully we'll make a lot of money and be involved in the community and focus on those things we can do.
Amen. Ayesha, what scares you?
I mean, it's obviously the same answer. The impact that overall geopolitics will have on macroeconomic conditions, particularly here domestically, is something I think we're all focused on. Obviously, the impact that has on consumer wallet. But, I think that we have all been a little surprised, but very hopeful because of the strength of the consumer over the last several years. And so we're going to remain hopeful and watchful, but focus on what we can control.
One of the things that we've been watching very closely is inbound international travel and outbound, so U.S. travelers traveling elsewhere, and we're way behind still where we were in 2019. Part of that is the strength of the dollar, so it becomes cheaper and easier for U.S. citizens or U.S. residents to go, whether it's to Europe or Asia or South America, and it's correspondingly more expensive for international tourists to come in. So that's one of the things we're watching very, very closely and carefully, and has concerned us, especially as every day on the news we hear about more tariffs and Canada becoming the 51st state and all all of this stuff. We're almost out of time, so I'm going to do my own version of the lightning round. And Keith, we'll start with you and work this way. Outside of your portfolio, favorite hotel to stay in for leisure?
You got to come back to me.
Okay, Walter.
So my wife and I, our 35th wedding anniversary was disrupted by COVID, but we ended up going to North Island, which is an amazing place, 11 villas, and you feel like you're on a private island. It's spectacular.
Ayesha?
So I have 2 young children. So my favorite place to go with my family is a small place called the Gasparilla Inn in Boca Grande, Florida. It just feels like, a throwback to a very different time. So it's lovely.
Mine is the Montage in Laguna Beach, where, I've had great experiences there. And the service they provided led to great experiences. And a very close second is the King David Hotel in Jerusalem. Keith, want to give it a shot?
I was going to say the Montage, so
Okay.
I should have spoken up, and then you would have had to pick somewhere else.
So we have to go together.
There you go.
We're out of time. Thanks to a wonderful panel. I wish we had 2-3 hours to do this, but thank you so much. Thank you all for listening.